Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, in which we'll talk about our new Viedoc official GitHub page and showcase it for you. And hopefully it will be a good resource for everything code related, whether it is integration or code that uses our API to do integrations, or whether it's custom reports or even functions in Viedoc. So basically everything code related. So if you ever wondered or wanted to use our API to do things and never knew how to start, this will be a valuable resource for you. But first things first, this webinar will be recorded and will be published, I think, through our website after the meeting. If you have any technical issues like I'm having right now, or if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat. We will answer questions after the chat, but please keep them coming so all the questions are valuable, and we will try to answer as many as possible. So with that, I think we are ready to start. My name is Majd Mirza. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Viedoc. Been working with everything Viedoc related for the past 15 years. And today I'm having this, very excited actually to have this webinar for you. So we will be talking about GitHub a lot, and we will showcase our new GitHub page. And hopefully by the end of this session, you will at least be familiar with what Git and GitHub is and be able to navigate through the different parts of our page that we have. So let's dive in. I'll try to make sure I'm also sharing, which I think I am, but probably. Okay, maybe I'm not sharing. So let's start with that. Okay, awesome. So basically, this is part of our Working Smarter series, and the idea was to showcase our GitHub page. But I thought, since this is Work Smarter series, I will take the opportunity to also talk a little bit about Git, which is like a very important part of GitHub. So maybe you can learn one thing or two that you might be able to use in your daily flow. But before we dive right in, we will start by looking quickly at our agenda. And the idea is we'll start by why. Why are we doing this? And why is this resource helpful? And then I'll dive right into Git and GitHub. I mean, they are different, and I thought it's actually important for you to at least understand the difference and what they are good for and how they're used. And then we will go to the demo of our GitHub page and the different resources, what you can find there. And hopefully during the way, I'll give you some practical tips of how you can incorporate this in your daily workflows, like depending on what you work with, but I think everyone has something to gain from this. So let's start with why. I mean, we do have a lot of resources existing today that we use to help or inform our users. We do have our e-learning page, which is a good resource for everything Viedoc related. We do have our API Swagger page, which is specific for the API and the different endpoints that we have. But we are actually missing something, an X there, and we've gotten a lot of questions over the years that, okay, we have the Swagger page. How do I start? How do I do this? How do I implement that? And how do I solve this problem? So basically, all of these questions were mostly code related. So there have been, I mean, it's so we thought that, okay, so then we need maybe a platform that allows us to share code, allow us to collaborate on code, reuse code and functionality from that we have written by the others, and also accept feedback and improvement to the code that we have written as well. So because of that, there is already a platform that is tailor-made just for sharing code. It's like the biggest platform in use, and that is GitHub. So it's been used by over 100 million developers worldwide. It has more than 420 million repositories, and the repository here call it, and think of it as a project. So 400 million code projects hosted in GitHub, and about 30 public repositories, which means that all the others are private repositories that are not open to the public, but are used by the developers daily. And again, you don't need to be a developer to benefit from this. Let's keep that in mind. Although this is a tool like for developers for their workflow, but it's a tool for sharing and collaborating on code. And I think everyone has something to benefit from that. So let's dive right into Git. What is Git? And if you look at this picture, if you've ever seen yourself in this position, if you've ever worked with anything code related and you've copied and created folders, version 1, version 2, version 3, trying to keep them in like or keep them organized and make sense of them, and you've thought like, is there a better way to do this? Then yes, there is, and that is what Git comes into the picture. So Git is a version control system that tracks all the changes that you do on your files locally. So whenever you add a file, you modify a file, you delete a file, it keeps tracks of all of that, and with the option to go back and look back in the history at what has happened, when, and what has changed. So basically, again, Git helps you to track every change to your files. It lets you go back to previous versions, but it also enables collaboration by combining the changes from multiple people. So you can not only work on your own files, you can share not only the files, but the whole changes and the history of the files with others. And that's where the whole power comes in, where you can share the changes with others and also see the changes that others have made. So being in a like an clinical vendor, think of Git as the audit trail for your code. So basically, it keeps track of all the changes, who did it, what has changed, and it enables you to view that at all times. So now you might ask, okay, so why should I care about Git? Well, I would say that if you've ever worked with any JavaScript function or edit check in Viedoc, if you like have like made modification and want to keep track of them, and also also keep track of the changes and the different versions you have of the function, I think Git might be a very easy way for you to use locally. And it makes it also easy for others to see what changes have been made to code, especially when you share those changes with others. And again, once you come over that little step, that is the scary part of Git, maybe, it's a very, very low or an easy tool to use. And I'll show you exactly how it works, so you might be able to adopt that in your own workflow. So before we do that, I'll just give you an overview of, the thought with when working with Git, how it's working. So think of like you work in a directory, you work in a folder on your system, you have the files you edit. Then you do something called git add. So you add files to a staging area. When you prepare your changes. And those changes that you have staged, you do a git commit, and that you also add another message on top, so that you basically commit and save your changes locally. So think of this message that you commit as the audit trail reason. Why did you do this change? And then Git will take care of who made the change and the date time of that. So then you can also, during the time, also go do something called git status, basically to view the changes that you have done. So it keeps you, it's very easy to see which changes have been made, what am I staging, and committing those into our local repository and saving them locally. Then all of this happens on your computer, and actually you don't even need to use to have the internet running for this to work, but you could also do a git push, and that's pushing everything to a remote repository in order to share your files and the changes and the metadata and the history with others and collaborate on them. In the same way, you can also do a git pull and receive or download all the repository and the code changes that other has done and see what changes other have done, so that you can complete or continue working from there. So this is the basic workflow of Git. You work in a folder, you do the changes, you stage them, and then you commit to your local repository. And I thought actually I'll quickly do a quick demo so that it's not so abstract, and give you a little bit of picture of how it can look like. So I'm in the terminal in Windows now. Don't be scared about the terminal. I'll show you another way that you can do this as well, but it's simpler here to show in the terminal. So this is a simple folder. I have a simple sum.js, and if you want to look at that file, it's a one file with just a JavaScript function. So now I want to start tracking the changes here. If I do git status, it will say you don't have a Git repository here. So we do want a Git repository. So I do git init, and then all of a sudden now, from now on, by this, I have now started to track the changes to my files, and I can see the changes. So I will start, since this sum.js has not been added yet, I'll do git add, and I'll do git commit to add this to the history. And now, basically, if I do git status, we'll see we don't have any changes in my tree. If I go back to the file now, and let's say I want to change the logic here, so I'll do b plus a instead of a plus b, save the file. The moment that I save the file and do git status now, okay, now Git tells us I have a modified file. I can do a git diff, and then it will show me here, okay, the red is how it used to be, the green is how it is now. So the change is I changed this line from a plus b to b plus a. If I want to commit this change, I just do git add. I can either add one file or all, so I'll add all now and do git commit. So modified the sum logic. Now, if I do git log, and this is basically the audit trail, now you'll see I did an initial commit, I did the commit, and then I did another one, modified the sum logic, and yeah, basically my name and the date and time. So you might wonder, okay, I don't want to work in the terminal. Well, of course, in most of the IDEs, there's a lot of front end or like graphical interfaces for this, but most of the IDEs actually have support for Git already built in. So you see here, I can see my history. So actually is initial commit and modified. I can, if I do a change here, added a comment. Whenever I save now, it will pop up here as a changed file. I can click on the file and I see that, okay, I can even change it here, added a comment, and I can see the change I did. If I also go back to the file and change back the logic to how it used to be, I save that one. And now you'll see I both see the added comment, and I see also that I changed b plus a to a plus b. I can commit here, changed again, commit, and then we'll get a new line to our audit trail. So now we have 3 changes. Again, all of this is done locally. All of this is done by just you doing git init and learning a few of these commands that you might like or will need to use. But even easier is to use an IDE that has Git built in. And by doing this, you have all of this audit trail for your code. You can go back and I can click on any of these commits and see what has changed, so you can view the changes. And the powerful thing here, and that is what we're gonna see next, is that you can share these with others, and that's where GitHubs come into the picture, because everything with Git is local, whereas GitHub is where we share things with others. So if you would want to start using Git, I would suggest that you head to their website. It's an easy download, and they have a lot of good resources to start with Git. And I didn't want to be so technical doing this webinar. If there is interest, we could definitely have a deep dive webinar just to go through Git, but I'll like leave it at this point and proceed. So now, why GitHub? I mean, Git is not GitHub. That's one thing. You can use Git without GitHub, but GitHub relies on Git. So think of Git as an online space. It's just a normal website or normal website, but it's a host for a lot of Git repositories. And a Git repository is just a folder or a collection of files. So it's a collection of Git repositories that you can find online. 90% of all the software projects are actually on GitHubs, and it's not only open source like we mentioned earlier, it's closed source as well. But I mean, Git is like a tool that all developers use these days. So GitHub allows you to browse repositories, it allows you to download code, it allows you to clone repository, which we're gonna talk about, and it also supports Markdown README files. And the reason I mentioned this is that it's not only code that you share, you can actually share like metadata or information or tutorials or documents about the files that you share, which makes navigating these files much easier. So this is, again, if we think about all the work, the whole workflow that I showed previously using Git as the green to the left, which tracks changes locally. When you do a push, you basically send your code and all of the changes to GitHub. And there it stores the changes and it shares the repositories and all the changes with others. And then you can also do a pull to get update from GitHub into your local computer so that you can start working with them. So this is basically how the workflow works between Git and GitHub. So to give you the same kind of overview of the workflow in GitHub, basically you head to the GitHub web site, and we're going to show this shortly. You browse for a repository, you start reading the README file, you check out the code, you can read the code also on the website itself. And then you can move to getting the files to your computer. You can either download or clone. And I'll talk a little bit about the difference soon. But you also have you have two options to work with the code. Either you download the code only, or you clone the whole repository. You also have an option to fork, which is basically, since the code we share is hosted on our own repository, you can actually create your own GitHub repository, which is private to you, and in which you can work with your files, make the changes you want, etc. And then, so you can make your modifications locally, but actually GitHub also allows us to do suggestions. So you can either suggest changes or suggest improvements or report issues. So there are many ways to actually collaboratively work on the code that GitHub gives us. Now, this is, I'll just move through this quickly, but this is another picture just to show you how the work between Git and GitHub works when you are like multiple people. So on the left side, you see the local workflow that we showed you. Like when you have a working copy, you stage the changes, you push to the local repository, and then you iterate all of these steps. Now you could push the code to the remote repository where it's stored. People can share that. Another developer can then clone this repository, fetch your changes, and then start working in the same iterative way. And then when they are done, push the changes to the remote repository. So, but the cool thing about Git is that although it looks like GitHub is a central server, it is actually not. Git is a distributed source control system, which means that every developer, every person that is doing a fetch is actually fetching the whole repository. So not only the code all the history, all the changes, everything you do on the code will be stored on your computer. So you have a full copy of the changes and the code that we have in the repository. So now, before we dive in and to our GitHub page, I want just to give you a little bit of a disclaimer that, I mean, the code that we usually develop at Viedoc is, of course, validated and tested and documented and ready for use in production. But this space that we have in GitHub is actually provided as is. So although many of these like files and functions and features or that we have there are fully working, we provide them as is and use them as a starting point that you can modify and benefit from in your own projects. So they are not validated for production use, although the functionality might very well work exactly as it's supposed to, but we don't give any guarantees here. So always validate and test before putting them in a live environment. And again, feel free to use them however you want, make suggestions or download the code, make any modifications, use them as a starting point or as a template. Only give us comments and let's work on this together. So now I'll head to actually Viedoc's official GitHub page, and the URL is github.com/Viedoc, and showcase or show you the repositories that we currently have, the vision we have with this page, and our thoughts about it. And I just realized I hadn't opened a browser, so I'll do that. Okay, so we'll head to github.com/Viedoc. And immediately you will see that, okay, we have 3 popular repositories. Actually, we only have 3 repositories, so they're all popular. There are 3 public. The first one is scripts. And in this one, we store all the scripts that are basically use our API. So anything that, if you want any information about integrations or how to use the API, this is the repository that you should check out. We have a repository for custom reports, and this is a repository that only contains our code and contains examples and templates and starting points for your own custom reports that you can modify and use as a starting point. We also have a JavaScript repository, and this is used for showing examples of edit checks, functions, visibility conditions, everything JavaScript related, basically. Like they do, what is, I mean, popular now is, yeah, I mean, when you head to this page, please give us a follow, and so that you receive notifications about what changes we have in the repositories. And I'll head down into these repositories and give you a little bit of an overview and show you a little bit about each one. So if we head first start with the script repository, when I go into the script repository, I will immediately see the code there. But also, if I scroll a little bit lower, you'll see now we have some text, and this is where this markdown README file is. So we see that this is the API scripts repository. We have the purpose. So welcome to the script repository for the Viedoc organization. This repository is dedicated to hosting various scripts that interact with the Viedoc EDC APIs. So use this as like information for integrating for your own integrations. We have an overview of the repository. So we have an import helper. We have a Viedoc site and users import tool. We have a Viedoc export tool. And all of them do specific tasks that many users have asked about. So if you want to like create sites and users, well, you should head to the Viedoc site and users import tool. If you want to know how to get export out of Viedoc, you can click on the Viedoc export tool. So we will do that. If I click on Viedoc export here, now we'll be taken to a page that explains this Viedoc export. Actually, it's not a tool, it's a script only, it's one file. And so it will give you some overview. We have one for Python, one for R. if you look to the left, you'll have the files here. So we can start with the Viedoc export.py. And this is a Python file that does all of the work that you need to do to actually do an export. So here you will see a function for getting a token. You will see a function for starting an export. You will see a function for check the export status, and then a function for downloading the export. And then of course there is some information here about, okay, how you run this script. And by following this code, you will be able to download and export using the normal export API for any of your studies. Of course, for this to work, you will need the client ID and client secret, which you can get from the Viedoc admin system. But other than that, it's a very easy script to use, and I think many people can find this very usable, and also enhance it and to suit their needs. But this will at least give you the basic information of how you do get the data out of the system without touching the Viedoc clinic. The same script is also provided in R. So if you prefer R as a language, then we have that as well. This, again, this repository, we're gonna enhance and continue adding more of these type of scripts that are related to the API. If you have any suggestions, please don't hesitate to let us know what you would want to see here. You also have an option here when you look at a page of a repository in GitHub to watch and also star this repository. So please do that. That will give us an indication if you find this usable. But you'll also have the option, actually, I'll not go over the fork yet. So now we browsed all the code in the web, in the browser. How do we get the code locally? Well, you have two options. You have the button here called code, and you can download as a zip. Basically, if you download as a zip, you'll get the whole repository as a zip file with all the different files and scripts contained inside that. The downside with, and this is maybe the easiest way to start. I mean, once you click download, you'll immediately get this zip file and you'll see all the same files there. This is maybe the easiest way to start, but the downside here is that you will not get any history. You will not get the audit trail of these files. And in order to do that, in Git, you use something called clone. And this is the URL for this repository that you can use to clone these files. And again, it's a very simple command. I didn't plan to, but I can actually show you this very easily. So if I do git clone and then paste that URL that I just copied from the page, we'll see here that I all of a sudden have a scripts repository. And if I go inside that one, I'll have exactly all the files that we had on the web page in GitHub. But the cool thing here is that you have complete history. So you have all the history that for this repository, not only the files, you have the history, who made the change and when were the changes made, which is really cool. The final option you also have is to fork this repository. And this is basically to get your own copy, not on your local repository or on your local computer, but to get this code to your own repository in GitHub. And then there you own it. So you can do all the modifications you want and all the changes you want. Now, moving on, let's look at the JavaScript repository. And again, in the same way, we have a README file. We have the different functions here, or an explanation of the different functions that we currently have. Now we only have two, which is the age calculation and the time difference calculation. But if you click on this one, you will be taken to the README file dedicated to that function. And then if I click on the file itself, you'll have the code here with comments and everything. And this is since GitHub is a tool like tailored for sharing code, we feel that sharing the code in this way is much more user-friendly for our users and a better way to share code. And that's why, again, we chose GitHub. Finally, let's look at the custom. And one thing here about the repositories that you see, actually, here we have Python, this is JavaScript, and this is R. So the custom report is our R repository that is tailored for custom reports. So this will give you actually a lot of more information in addition to goals. So you have a quick start guide, we have how you develop a custom report, we have additional information, we have a lot of example reports that if I click on here, we'll have a big list of example reports, for example, and then you can dig into the folders here. So we have blood pressure, demographics, and then for each one, you will have the complete custom report written in R that you can download and then use on your own studies, or customize, make changes to, and tailor to your needs. So this was actually the demo about our GitHub page. Again, it's a collection of 3 repositories now that we will keep to add code to and like improve with more examples. Our vision is that all the code changes, all the examples that might benefit our users or that you are asking about, we will host them on GitHub. And also here you will actually have, I forgot to mention that, but under a repository, there is also actually an issues section. So if you have any issues about these scripts that you want to ask about, feel free to ask here, but let's keep the questions only about the scripts. If there's like standard support questions, we'll of course go through the standard support channels, but questions immediately on the code here, you're welcome to ask them. You also have, I didn't think so or mention it, but we have pull requests, which is an option in GitHub in which if you find that you have a function or have made a modification that might benefit others and you want to share with others, you can do a pull request and we will review it. And if we see that this is valuable to others, we can include that in our repository, and yeah, then it will be part and everyone else will be able to access it and see it and benefit from it. So this was our Viedoc repository. It's again github.com/Viedoc. You don't, to mention again, you don't need to be a programmer to use this. This is a normal web page. You can go in and start browsing the code, looking into the script, reading the README files, and then checking the code. And when you're ready, you can actually, you could even, if it's like a JavaScript function that you want to look into, you don't need to, I mean, you don't even need to start by downloading the file. You can just copy the code here or look at the code, how this function was implemented, implement that on yourself, or you can just download the code or clone the repository. I'll go back to the presentation now. I just have a few slides left. So yeah, so basically the takeaways from the demo is, like I mentioned, start with the README files. It tells you a lot about the repository and the different sections of the repository, what it contains, and you will get a good overview of the contents. Start by browsing the files and folders, look into the scripts that you might be interested in, and browse the code. Then you have option of download or clone, and then give feedback or suggest improvement. So use the functionality that we have there, and let's work on this code together. Now, the key takeaways of all of this is, I mean, again, Git helps us to track changes locally, and it enables collaboration. So if you have, if you're working with any kind of code, be it a JavaScript function or edit check, or even a custom report, any type of code that you want to track changes with, Git can definitely help you. If you want to share those changes with others, then GitHub is the way to go. We use the GitHub page to share scripts and reports and tools that helps hopefully help our user to make, I mean, for their integrations or their custom reports. And again, you don't need to be a developer. You can simply browse the page and read through the files. There's always a README file to help you with instructions. Validate and test the scripts before using them in production. Again, this is used as examples, as an aid in addition to our e-learning and the Swagger page we have for the API. So use this as a reference, as a starting point for your own integrations. But please also, you can contribute by reporting issues, but also suggest improvements. So if you've solved, if you have a function that you think that others might benefit from, don't hesitate to create a pull request, and we will include that in our repository. So what's next? Well, the next thing for you is to go to github.com/Viedoc, browse the code there, give us feedback, and we hope it will be beneficial for you. And now we can move to the Q&A section.
Hello, my name is Binish. There is a question from Frank. He says, I understand that GitHub can be used as an audit trail for coding, but not sure whether it is possible to use it as audit trail for modification made on a form or in the workflow directly in the Viedoc designer. Is it possible?
No, unfortunately not. No, it cannot be used as an audit trail for your code in Viedoc Designer. This is the example I gave is when you want to store this the different functions or edit checks. Usually our users store them outside of Viedoc in like folders, and then to keep track of the changes you've made to them, storing them in a Git repository might be very beneficial. That said, actually, remember that the ODM files that you have, I mean, you can get from Viedoc when you create a design are basically text files. So you do have an option to actually including your ODM files in a Git repository if you choose to do that, and then you can track the changes. So to answer the question, no, you cannot use Git to track changes in Viedoc directly. It's only used to track changes of code that you commit to it separately.
There is another question. Are the scripts for custom reports in GitHub the same as those available in Viedoc e-learning, or will there be more scripts available in GitHub?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I think the ambition that we have is to try and move more and more of the code from the e-learning into our GitHub repository, because it's a more user-friendly way to share code. And going on in the future, most of the all the new examples will be in the Git repository only. So there will definitely be more in the Git repository. Maybe not currently at the moment, but in the future, I mean, all the changes will be there, or all the new scripts will be added, or all the new examples will be added into the Git repository.
A follow-up question. Can I get notified when there is a code changed or a new report is added?
Yes, actually, if you want, you can, like I showed on the GitHub page, you can follow the page and there is a notifications button. So if you are interested in like all the changes that are done to their public repo, you can follow the repository and then receive notifications whenever anyone makes a modification to that repository. So yes, it is possible. And this is part of the functionality that GitHubs add around Git as a core functionality, that it's like, as of all the other social media platforms, you have this notifications and the follow and to receive notifications about code in this case.
Okay, there is another question from Pedro. Hello, is there any way to ask for request? For example, I'm looking for a function to calculate monthly withdrawal rate per site. Does anyone has programmed something for that? And then a user would post a code which potentially could help me in that task.
Yes, exactly. And that is actually this issues section. So the issues section in GitHub can be used for two things: either report an issue about a problem in the code, or you could just post a question that, for example, this question, like, how do I calculate this? And then all the people that has access to the GitHub repository or are viewing the page will be able to respond and will be able to give code changes or suggest code that might solve that problem. When that is done, and we have a solution that we are happy with or that solves the problem, we can also include that in the main repository for others to benefit from. So yes, questions like this can be asked in the issues section of the GitHub page.
Thank you, Majd.
And then there is an issues section for each repository, so you can ask them in the different repositories. So if it's a API script, or if it's a JavaScript, or if it's a custom report, those can be asked in different repositories.
Okay, I have another question, maybe not directly related. Hi, I already use R in Viedoc report. However, I haven't worked with the Python yet. I'm curious if it's possible to use Python in Viedoc report or any other internal function of Viedoc.
No, actually, currently in Viedoc reports, it's not possible. Currently, Viedoc reports only supports R. That said, and we are working on a not official part of the system that actually does support Python for data exchange. Yeah, there might be an announcement of that in the future, but currently it's not possible. Currently, we support R for the custom reports and JavaScript for the edit checks only. But of course, I mean, the reason we have the Python examples in the GitHub page is that when interacting with our API, you can use any language that you are comfortable with. So we have, like I showed, we have two examples for Python and R for downloading data from Viedoc. We could have used Java or JavaScript or any other language as well. So when interacting with the API, you are free to choose, and that's why we have chosen to show the examples in Python there as well.
Thank you, Majd. Frank, again, he is asking, is it possible to use Git to compare the differences between two files? For example, two ODM export or configuration report Excel files.
Yes, it is possible, but yeah, it is possible, but it's not intended to be done like that. So the way you can compare them is that you first check in the first file, and then you modify that file by replacing it with the other file, and then you do a compare. So it is possible, because I mean, Git is a tool that I mean is good at comparing text files. So yes, it's definitely possible. That said, the ODM structure with the XML is not always easy to compare, and that's maybe why the question was asked. But definitely give it a try to check in the first file, replace it with the content of the other file, and then do a git diff, and you will see the difference between them.
Okay, that are our questions. No more open questions.
Okay, so then if we don't have any more questions, I hope this was beneficial for you. Again, if you would want another session to dig deeper into the technical things of Git or GitHub, please let us know. If you have any questions, again, this webinar will be recorded. If you have any follow-up questions afterwards, please direct them to, I would say, our support team or professional services, and they will be able to help you or guide, forward your question to well, at the end maybe it will reach me. So if you have any questions, you're definitely welcome to ask them. Thank you, everyone, and yeah, see you next time.